thanks for chatting today. Everybody's super excited to hear about your book. And I definitely want to talk about the Chinese Medicine Forestry Trust first and again, because last time we tried to talk about it, I also had the technology breakdown in our filming. Do you remember that? And I had my phone looking at the computer and we were on a Zoom because I couldn't get you on the Facebook Live. It was a mess.
Yeah.
So let's definitely go through that a bit again, because it's so cool what you're doing. And I love that. My favorite thing about what we chatted about was I love how you talk about how us as a profession really need to step up and be more responsible, take more responsibility for the environment.
Yeah, so the link between the trust and what we'll talk about in a bit, which is the book that I've written, Memoirs and Short Stories, is that the profits and the sale of that are going to the trust. So, anybody who's paying attention and is not sticking their head in the sand, we're looking at really environmental collapse, we're looking at species extinction, we're looking at runaway climate change. The prospects for the next generation or two or three are looking really bad. It's a race against time. It's tragic. It's terribly, terribly, terribly sad.
Yeah.
And it's the reactions that we have. The normal reactions we have are grief, denial, anger. Denial is a big one, of course.
Big one.
Because human beings we're very good at reacting to instant danger. Somebody came into this room with a knife, I'd react instantly, but long-term dangers seem unreal.
Yeah.
So, we have all kinds of strategies, many of us, for ignoring it. But if we actually let it in and feel it, especially, if we love the natural world, then we're called upon to act. And the great thing about acting is that it ticks two boxes. If we act, we contribute to the welfare of the world. And we also contribute to our own mental well-being, because to be overwhelmed by dark visions of dark future and to feel utterly helpless is really bad for our mental health. And even if we're not conscious of it, I've got grandchildren in their teens and early 20s. I'm really aware of what they're hearing and seeing all the time, compared, it does tie in with writing my memoirs, but compared to how I felt when I was their age, which was in the 1960s, we had lots of problems. We had wars and the fear of nuclear weapons, it's true. But we also had very strong feelings that we could change the world and the future would be brighter. I don't think that's there now. And I feel sure that the challenges to the mental health of young people today, which are really severe, I don't know if you have surveys in the States, but in the UK, it's shocking the level of mental health challenges young people face. There's lots of reasons, I'm sure.
Well, there's a lot.
One of them is every day they hear that the natural world is falling apart.
Yeah.
Sea levels are rising. The glaciers are melting. So,
but it's the same. It is the same in the States. The mental health of the younger generation is declining big time. I think it's worse than ever.
It is, I'm sure. Because there isn't what should be natural to people that age is the feeling that the future is bright. Anyway, so for myself and some colleagues here in Brighton, we decided, okay, best thing is to act rather than just feel overwhelmed. And we all love trees. We've all, I've read a lot about trees and their place in the natural world, and planting trees and protecting trees ticks so many boxes. They sequester carbon. a mature tree can be a home to hundreds and hundreds of species of insects and birds. They hold water, flooding, and they also have a quite extraordinary impact on our own mental health. So there's ample evidence now that when you just look at, even if you just look at pictures of trees, blood pressure drops, cortisol levels drop, so even more so when we go and walk amongst trees. So planting trees and protecting forests seems like a really good thing to do. And I felt that particularly because Chinese medicine is rooted in nature, and all the images we use, of the 5 elements, the 5 faces connected to different aspects of the natural world. We talk about climatic factors, we talk about water and rivers and seas and streams, and if we practice Qigong, we do tree Qigong and bird Qigong and things. So this cultural thing we're immersed in is absolutely connected to nature. So the idea was, okay, we'll set up something, we'll invite everybody in the Chinese medicine profession, practitioners, students, businesses, patients, to give us their money. And what we do is simply shunt it into 3 international organizations that plant trees and protect forests. So all the details are on if you Google Chinese Medicine Forestry Trust, you can see where we give the money to, who our partners are and who we are and so on. And it's all held, it's effectively a charity. It's held under the auspices of the Charities Trust. So we don't actually touch any of the money, all the money goes to them. And we tell them, where to put it, who to send it to. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, so it's 100% like full donation to the trees, basically.
And, the best for us is, and the best for everybody who wants to help, it's a small monthly donation, an amount that you might not miss. When you plant trees in poor countries, it can cost as little as $1 a tree. So, if you have $5 a month or $10 a month, you can go to bed knowing that you have been responsible planting that number of trees. So, what's not to like about it?
Right? So, and the website, it's Chinese Medicine. Wait, what is the website? Let me put it in the...
I always forget it. So if you just...
I'll look it up after.
So just Google Chinese Medicine Forestry Trust.
Yeah, because I think it's the initials or something. I think. I can't remember last time I looked. I'll find it afterwards and I'll put it in the comments. I always have to Google it myself, actually. There's also a link to it. There's a page on the Journal of Chinese Medicine website, so you can go from there. So all the proceeds from your new book, Finding My Way, goes directly to the Chinese Medicine Forestry Trust. So everybody that invests in the book, it goes straight to trees. So it's win-win.
And you can buy it on Amazon as an ebook or a paperback.
Yeah. I'll also link that too. Yeah. So it is in paperback too, because I got it on my Kindle, so I didn't know. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's talk about your book. So, let's see. First, I would love to know, like, what inspired you to write it? Like, what was your, like, how come?
That's a really good question. It's quite hard to answer. The book's in 2 parts, memoirs and short stories. And the short stories I mostly wrote, a few years ago, because I did a creative writing course, came up, a batch of short stories. The memoirs I wrote last year during lockdown. I guess, first of all, a lot of people my age write memoirs. I guess you reach a certain age and you start to look back on your life and you start seeing maybe a shape to it, or you just think, well, I've been alive and this stuff has happened to me. this ring light's really reflecting the glasses I'm trying.
Oh, I didn't know.
I don't know your taste of it. I think I've led an interesting life. I do.
Yes.
For two reasons. You know, one, for some reason, me, personal, I led an interesting life, but also cultural. I mean, you know, born at a certain year,
Yeah.
living through, you know, reaching teen years at a very different time from now.
Yeah.
Culturally really different. I traveled a lot, you know, hitchhiked around the world, got myself into all kinds of weird and wonderful,
Yeah.
and exciting situations, took lots of drugs, had a good time, demonstrated against the Vietnam War and lots of other stuff. But we have many opportunities that are less available now. I mean, traveling,
Yeah.
you know, the kind of traveling I did was, it was really in the very, very early days, or even before mass traveling.
Yeah, we were talking about that because it was so different, our travel experiences, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you were mostly hitchhiking, right?
Yeah.
That is, or all hitchhiking. Is that the only way that you traveled distance-wise?
When I was, in my late teens, I only traveled by hitchhiking, And it was before, you know, it was before things like Lonely Planet books. You know, it's not, you know, I've traveled with Lonely Planet and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going there tomorrow. This is the best restaurant. And everybody goes to that hotel and it's all kind of pre-planned, whereas this is just entire adventure. It was like constantly going into the unknown.
Yeah.
And often solo and often really not many other people around, just a few hippie travelers.
Yeah, so, and you also did it with like barely any money.
Yeah, I did it with, I mean, I spent 3 months in Morocco without a penny.
Which is crazy. Like, I just can't imagine. I don't know what I'd do if I was in a foreign country and I had no money.
Well, frankly, it was easy. I had long hair. Actually, I didn't always have long. I had to have it cut off once because I was in a movie. But generally, at that time, for me, I'd arrive somewhere, I'd look around, and I'd look for people that looked like me. You know, and I go, hi. Where do I eat? Show me a place to stay. Can you help me?
Yeah.
Can you feed me or whatever? You know. So so the traveling was great. That was, you know, that's the first part of the book is the travels and the kind of adventures and sometimes fairly extraordinary things that happened on the road. Yeah, and then it moves on to my first business, which was natural foods business, and that was pretty crazy too. That was also very much a hippie endeavor done on a shoestring and again, all kinds of weird and wonderful events, you know, arrests and explosions and
I know. I know, craziness. Because of who? Wait, it was because of like something you had in the store or something you were hosting that the local mafia didn't agree with, or what was this like? What was it?
That was the mafia too. Well, it was actually the fascists. So we were. I mean, that, you know, there were a whole series of events. That particular one was we were a natural foods co-op and we were selling a socialist type newspaper. That one of the things
what it was.
They exposed local Nazis because the same as you have in the States, there were secret far right groups.
Yeah.
And you know, the local far right group decided they didn't like us selling this newspaper, so they attacked the business. Our warehouse burnt down.
Yeah.
You know, we had attacks on the shop and so on.
Crazy. So, okay, so you did traveling when you were young, and then you opened the macrobiotic place, and then the next thing you did was the Chinese medicine after that?
Yeah, so I was probably, I was 27 when I slowly moved out of the natural foods business,
Mm-hmm.
which is still going, by the way. That business has grown and
Mm-hmm.
grown and grown and grown. It's a big workers' co-op now.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. And I, I had a lot of fun doing it. It was really, it was a passion. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't come to one degree from, oh, I want to make money out of the business. It
Mm-hmm.
simply came from a passion for, I needed to heal myself after all my degenerate years.
Yeah.
And so I got into macrobiotic. And I also wanted to heal the world, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
to offer natural foods, organic foods, simple foods. Um, it was very early days. It was before, way, way before the kind of real cultural change into natural food. So it was a struggle, economic struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So there was all this passion and vision and excitement. But in the end, I realized I didn't really want to be a shopkeeper for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Setting it up and getting it going and trying to get it to survive through the hard years. That was the interesting bit for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had got more and more interested in East Asian medicine. The macrobiotics, if anybody knows about it, based on Japanese ideas of yin-yang harmony and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a very natural path in to Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I was.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Oh, you go ahead.
Well, I came back from both times. I came back from my longest trips. I was sick.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time, came back from Morocco with hepatitis, and that inspired my move into natural foods. And then I came back from India with an unknown, undiagnosable disease, which really set me loads of challenges for many years. And that was also part of the reason I wanted to study Chinese medicine. So if I could find a solution. It was only about 3 years ago I discovered it was Lyme disease. But,
yeah, which is crazy. Your whole life you had that.
Well, 40 years, 45 years.
Yeah.
But the Chinese have got a wonderful saying, no disease, short life, one disease, long life.
Yeah.
So if you have a disease that challenges you, I owe, for example, my passion for Qigong, my dedication to Qigong to the fact that I needed to do things to keep my head above water.
Yeah.
Keep me healthy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I mentioned to you about your book that I love and why I think it's so great that acupuncturists specifically should read it is because, like what you're talking about now, you were a kid, directionless, broke, just traveling and wandering the world, and then you decided you got sick, and then you decided to get into like macrobiotics, and then you opened a shop, and then like that kind of led you to Chinese medicine. Like, I just think it's like this interesting all over the place journey, and like I've said, it just beautifully humanizes you, and it allows an acupuncturist reading your book to just see that like you are no different than any of us. There's nothing like extra special about you. You weren't like born into like some Chinese medicine society, like you just found your way there through things that happened in your life, and through taking action, through your interests and all that stuff. And it's just so amazing the impact that you've been able to have, but coming from like nothing special, you know what I mean? Like you're just like everyone else. And for me, it was so inspiring to read that and to learn more about you and to see the, you could say global impact that you've had on our profession, on Eastern medicine. But you just did it just being you. You're just a normal person, just like the rest of us.
Yes, I absolutely. But I do also want to say that I think my early life had something to do with that. because in positive and negative ways. I came from quite a high achieving family. My father was a headmaster, my grandfather was a professor of law, and they imbued me. They were all very left wing. My parents were communists, my grandfather was communist, which wasn't a dirty word at that time. I have to say. Really in the 1930s and the 1940s, communism wasn't viewed as it is now. And the communists in my family were, I'd say, almost spiritual. They held a vision of a better world. They really did.
Yeah.
A more equal, a more just.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. And so, I was imbued with this really strong feeling of justice, and also having a Jewish part of me, my mother's background, it added up to this thing that you have to do good in the world. You have to act in the world. It's kind of duty. But this wacky family I came from, my crazy Jewish Russian mother and all the. You have to read the book, but
yeah, it's good. It's in the book.
They created problems for me because they decided to make a home in one of the most conventional and suburban suburbs of South London. So that I also felt incredibly out of place. And in the end, this sort of weird combination of being inspired by these political ideas and also rebellion against the conservatism of where I lived, that's what shifted me into what you could call the alternative world, finding a different path. I just could not tolerate the thought of following the path that was expected of me.
Yeah, so a little bit of a rebel.
Yeah, exactly. It sort of forced me to be a rebel, but also forced me to feel I have to do something. So,
we have comments here that someone says they don't like that I called you a normal person and not special. I don't mean that you're not special. You know what I mean. I mean that it's inspiring that anyone can do big things, and make an impact.
Let me tell you that it took a lot of courage to publish this for two reasons. One is it's very self-exposing. I think, there's a long chapter on the kind of mental breakdown I had and the therapeutic journey, which for me was one of the most interesting and best things in my life. But it's very, very self-exposing. And the other thing is, there's a theme running through the book, among others, which is encounters with gurus. And my distaste, really passionate, deeply held distaste for the whole guru phenomenon, and for people who allow themselves to be put on a pedestal, and for all the people who want to put people on a pedestal. And it's really bad for both parties. It's bad for the guru, and it's bad for the people who want to. And when I say guru, I mean it in the widest sense. So if you make a name for yourself in any field, there's a need. People want to put you on a pedestal. And it's quite nice in a way to be, well known in the profession, and it's quite nice to have respect and praise and things like that. But it can very easily move into a bad place, which is actually not real. And so I realized in writing this book I was going to do exactly what you said, which is undermine that kind of otherness or the pedestalness, and just be really straight and be really honest and say, this is who I am, and this is, what I've done. I mean, there's even a bit. I wrote in the chapter on jobs that I did before I decided on natural foods. There's, I was dealing cannabis. Quite.
And it got dangerous.
Very dangerous, and in reasonably substantial amounts. So, yeah, so that's it really. Just trying to be straight about what, what's happened in my life. That's why it's called Finding My Way.
Yeah,
Going through things, and then, which I hope we all do, that,
exactly.
to slowly move towards becoming, there's this phrase, I always thought it was a Taoist phrase, but I can't find it now. Maybe it's Confucian, a true person. That's the ideal, to become a true person.
Yeah.
Which we do by being honest and being open.
Yeah.
And all those things.
Yeah. Just being real, because we all struggle. We all struggle. It's impossible not to struggle. But for certain, those that are in the limelight, people don't often think that they struggle with the same things that they do,
Well, there's a movement, and it's actually, I realized, although I felt quite anxious about the self-exposure, particularly about my therapy, I realized that it's actually a trend now among, a growing trend among men, because what we discover is that a lot of seemingly incredibly successful and incredibly confident men, sportsmen and whatever, actors and musicians and all kinds of people, actually go through periods where their mental health is really challenged. And it's been the big male secret to keep quiet about it. And it still is, and it causes so much pain to men to be like that, because what happens if you keep the lid on all that is you get sick, you get addicted to drugs of different kinds, you get addictive behaviors, you get, you go down dark paths. Whereas if we can be honest and regard it as an invitation to explore and to learn and to change, the opposite happens. Of course, we grow from it.
It is a beautiful example that you set by sharing that, because it is something that is starting to be more talked about, but it's not at all been like okay, for men to not be the strong ones, and not be okay, and to have these emotional breakdowns. So
and I have to say that was big for me before therapy. And therapy, I really kind of let it all out. And now I still like to be, I like to be the strong one. I really do. I like, I embrace that I'm the rock. So it's not all bad. It can be a good thing. As long as it's yin and yang always.
Yeah. And
I'm allergic to hyper-vulnerability. No, I am.
Allergic.
Well, I am. I think that there's a danger that when we put a high value on exposing vulnerability, that we can over-prioritize vulnerability at the expense of inner strength and resilience. And it's a balance between the two.
100%. Yeah. And the thing is, too, that you can be both. You don't have to choose one or the other. Like, you can hold space and you can be vulnerable and strong in the same moment. Yeah. So it is an amazing part of your journey that you got to you explored that, and it helps so much with things. It's just incredible. I mean, your book is really incredible. Like, there's so many layers to it. And then on top of it, your short stories. Your short stories are so vivid and so, I mean, you're absolutely an incredible writer. You have such an imagination. You can write textbooks, but you can also write like these crazy stories. I have no idea how you think about this stuff. Where do you get the inspiration for your stories?
It's a weird process. I think you probably find, if you talk to any creative person, where stuff comes from, it's just very mysterious. It's almost that, you sit down and maybe with just a vague idea, and some other takes me over.
Interesting.
And it appears, the story appears, and then it's, you have to edit when you write. That's really, really, editing is so important.
Yeah.
So editing, I understand what goes on. Editing is logical.
Yeah.
It's creative. Editing is really creative, but it's creative in a way that is much easier to understand than the first phase, which is where we have to sort of kind of turn off our editing mind, and things happen. And I read my own stories sometimes. I think, just where the hell did that come from? I have no idea.
I thought that with every story.
Yeah. It's just crazy.
I thought that, like, especially with the werewolf guy one. I mean, like, at least I think he turned into a werewolf.
I think he did, yeah.
But I was like, what? Where did he get this story?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So you just, it's allowing the imagination.
Yeah.
Really allowing it, and yeah.
That's awesome. Somebody watching says he's reading your book right now.
Robert. Oh, good.
Yep. He says, amazing story of a great personality. Yep.
Can I read a bit?
Yes, let's do that. So,
okay.
So yes, so please read us a part of the book. Tell us what you're going to read.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to read, I sort of half wanted to read more adventurous stuff, but Alyssa and I decided that.
Well, I mean,
it's fine. That since this was, the people watching would be acupuncturist, I'd read a little bit about my trip to Nanjing in China in 1981. It's about 6 minutes of reading. If that's okay?
No, that's fine, yeah.
Okay. It was December 1981, and though the temperature outside was 5 below zero, the stove in the heart of the large, bright clinic room threw out welcome waves of heat. This was in honor of our status as foreign students, and without us, there would have been no heating at all. Nanjing lies on the south bank of the Yangtze River and was therefore officially warm, according to the government, and subject to very tight coal rations. We had no such luck, though, in the medical university. We sat in unheated classrooms with the windows inexplicably thrown open. Like every Chinese person, we soon learned to dress in fat layers of clothing topped with padded army greatcoats. Even so, it was only the 10 minutes of table tennis every tea break that kept my blood moving. We always began the day seated around the table, drinking tea and chatting. There was Dr. Xiao, our teacher, broad-faced, energetic, and excited by the novelty of having foreigners to teach and to show off to. Next to him, Dr. Lin, short and fierce, was quick to defend Dr. Xiao if she ever thought I was disrespectful, which usually meant asking too many questions. Xiao Tao, our boyish, bespectacled interpreter, soon became a friend. He bridled at being called Xiao, little, especially as his best friend and fellow interpreter, just a few months older, was Lao, old Jin. Tao clearly thought he deserved the honor of an upgrade, and one morning appealed to Doctors Xiao and Lin and Nurse Mei. Looked him up and down for a long time, carefully measuring him and weighing him, and then shook their heads. Not ready yet, they said. Though to his embarrassed pleasure, I started calling him Lao Tao, Old Tao, away from the clinic. Within an hour, the 5 beds lined up along the clinic walls were full, and several patients waited their turn to see the doctor. A woman was called to the consultation desk. Dr. Xiao asked precise, targeted questions and took a long look at the tongue. Then she rested each wrist in turn on a small blue cotton cushion with the name of the hospital printed in faded red characters. We fell silent as Dr. Xiao spent an age gently pressing her pulses, as though playing a fine musical instrument, then asked us to feel them ourselves and tell him what we found. Finally, he sat back, gathered himself and spoke. This disease is sinusitis, not frontal headache. The patient has suffered from it for 7 years since catching cold. It is made worse when she drinks alcohol or eats too much greasy food, also when she gets upset. The pattern is phlegm heat in the stomach channel. Now, what points should we needle? Then, as always, he gave advice. No more rich food, and you must stay calm. Worry achieves nothing. But it's okay. We can help you. Just come regularly for a while, and you'll get better. That's right, you listen to the doctor and do what he says, shouted one of the waiting patients, drawn up as close to the desk as possible to hear every word. That's what he told me, and now my piles are almost gone. After the first few weeks, I was trusted to needle some of the patients. At the beginning, Dr. Xiao was confused. You know a lot of Chinese medicine theory, he said. Very good, but you know nothing about needling. It was true. I'd watched in astonishment as he plunged needles into acupuncture points far deeper than anything I'd ever seen in my 3 years of training in England. Sometimes, as he pushed the needle 2 centimeters below the eyeball deep into the socket, or beneath the earlobe, so far into the head, I feared he would spear the brain. He reminded me of one of those circus performers who used to lock his assistant into a box and pierce it from all sides with long swords. And unsurprisingly, the patients felt it, sometimes shouting out with the intensity of the sensation. At the beginning, though, when I needled them, they complained loudly that they couldn't feel anything, and these foreigners had no idea what they were doing. The treatment may sound brutal, but it was a revelation to me how powerful acupuncture could be, as patients, often with severe, intractable or hyperacute disorders, got better in front of my eyes. One morning I was treating a 14-year-old girl with crippling asthma, brought to Nanjing by her parents from the far reaches of Jiangsu province. Because they could only stay in town for a fortnight, we treated her every day. I'd given her regular acupuncture and was just finishing injecting a solution made from human placenta into acupuncture points on her back. I'm going to interrupt and just say, this is kind of written for the general public, so I don't mention technical acupuncture points. When the clinic door burst open and a young man staggered in. On his back was his brother, whom he just carried up 3 flights of stairs because the hospital had no elevator. Dressed in filthy olive green work clothes, this tough-looking peasant was clutching his right ribs and groaning in pain. After asking the brother a few questions, Dr. Xiao didn't hesitate in his diagnosis: biliary ascariasis, worms in the bile duct. This normally rare disorder was common among peasant farmers and was passed on by eating raw vegetables from fields fertilized with human manure, one of the secrets of China's millennia-long history of sustainable agriculture. When the worms travel from the gallbladder along the biliary duct, it causes a pain just like gallstones, which some say is the worst pain the human body can suffer. This man had been in agony for 36 hours, his brother said. He hadn't slept in all that time, just cried out day and night. Dr. Xiao took an acupuncture needle and inserted it next to the patient's nose, pushed it through the flesh towards a point below the eye, and started twirling it vigorously. This is an empirical treatment, he said. The needle sensation has to be stronger than the pain. True to his words, the patient stopped holding his ribs and started pointing at his face in astonishment. 30 seconds later, he was snoring.
Man.
And yeah.
That is definitely not like our intern experiences here in the States.
No, I mean, most of the patients we had they were called peasants because they came in from the countryside, or workers, working in factories and things.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. Thank you so much for reading that. That was a great passage too. I love that passage. So fascinating. So, okay, so I think that your book sounds fascinating and everybody on here should get it and read it. There's like so much to it. Like there's just so much depth and layers to it. All kinds of stuff is in that book. And then the short stories are so entertaining too.
Do you want to be my agent, Teresa?
Yes, I'll be your agent.
I need somebody like you. Yeah. I have to be honest and say, when I finally took my courage in both hands and thought, I'm going to reveal myself to the world, warts and all, I did in the expectation that hundreds of people would want to buy the book. So far they haven't. So
yeah.
Please do. I really I want people to read what I've written. And as you say, especially the short stories are very dear to me. And I think they're a good read. And even if you don't like the book and even if you don't read it, if you buy it, you've planted a few trees. Yeah. So what's not to like, really?
Exactly. And I was telling them when you were paused that if anybody wants, I'll throw in my free ebook for practice building. The 75 tips for building a successful practice, since that's what I do, just to get people motivated to get the book. And if you buy 500 books, you can get into any of my programs for free.
Well, look, I have to say, that's a no-brainer because I know Alyssa's work. We invited, the Journal of Chinese Medicine invited Alyssa to come and teach a day in London on really on practice building and her unique approach to it. Everybody loved it, and I absolutely loved it, and it produces results. And the bottom line is a lot of acupuncturists are trying to survive, need to survive, not always the best at running a successful practice, and often going down the wrong path of spending lots of money on advertising and things. And when you hear what Alyssa has to say, it's a completely new perspective, and it works. So that's a great offer.
Thank you. That was a magical day in London.
They make much more money back than the cost of the book, which is only about only about $8 or $9. I can't remember.
Yeah, and your book could even be a cool book to keep in people's acupuncture offices. Like just in the waiting room. I think so. Because you're like the pioneer of acupuncture into the Western world.
I'd rather they put my other book, Live Well, Live Long, in the waiting room.
Yeah, that's true.
It's got a lot of good information and advice to people about how to be well, how to be healthy.
Yeah. Someone on here actually said they were reading that one right now.
Oh, great. Yeah, I hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah, that one is an awesome book too, because we didn't have any book like that, that brought all that information together. The Yangshen, right? That's what it's called?
Yeah.
Catherine says here, survival back in the 60s was different than today. Boomers still have to be courageous. Yes, it's very different times back in the 60s for sure. For sure. Yeah. All right, so if you buy the book, you will donate to the Chinese, it goes to, the investment goes to the Chinese Medicine Forestry Trust. And then if you send me your receipt that you get it, you get my little free ebook on building a successful practice. The stories are amazing. The whole like memoirs are just so inspiring. And it was super courageous of you to write all of that. And I love that you wrote all that, you know, and I love that you're always just sharing exactly who you are. You know, it's awesome. And it only just inspires everyone more. And I love that you read your book here today. We have you reading your actual book. It was a great idea.
Well, it's a lovely opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for chatting with us today and sharing your book and sharing yourself again. And as always, it was amazing. We'll have to get back on here and chat about something too again, sometime soon.
I'm sure we can find something to talk about. Absolutely.
I'm sure.
I can read some
okay,
of the naughty,
thanks, Peter.
I can read some of the naughty stuff next time.
You should.
Thanks, Alyssa.
I dare you.
And thanks everybody for joining. And right, good.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thanks. Okay. I'll talk to you soon.